Alright guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. We're going to be doing your third tutorial called Communicating Your Results. Alright, and to start this off, I'm going to actually have you guys go ahead and skip off to page 5. You guys already know how the beginning works. So, writing up a lab report. We're not going to go in too much depth with this, but I do want to give you a general idea. And to do this a little bit more simply, just keep in mind our monkey experiment that we created in the last tutorial, or maybe that was the first tutorial. I'm not really sure anymore. I just keep using the monkeys, so we're going to use them again. So just to rebrief, we had monkeys, and they were all huddled up in a corner, and I was like, well, maybe it's because of temperature, so now I'm going to test different temperatures and see if the monkeys spread out. Alright, so let's talk about this title. Let's call this title, or all your lab reports, they start off with the title, and this can be like, I don't know, monkeys huddle. I don't even know. So, a monkey's huddle. That's going to be our title for this. It doesn't really matter. So you end up with a title, and then you got to state the problem. So the problem is, let's see, I don't know. Here's my title. Here's my problem. Monkeys are too close. I don't know. You're really just stating that they're all huddled together. All right. So that's your problem. Now you're going to do our hypothesis, and if you remember from last time, our hypothesis is why we predicted that they were too close. And I said it was temperature, so I was like, maybe they're hot. So, like, I don't know. Sweaty monkeys. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Cold monkeys. And so my hypothesis is that they are huddled up because they are cold. Alright, so here are our monkeys. Materials. Oh my gosh. Okay, so materials are probably going to be the most annoying part. Materials you normally list all in some paragraph, whatever. So I don't know. We have like cage. Not really, because these monkeys are actually in more of a playpen, but I know how to draw. Well, actually, I don't know how to draw. Whatever. That's a cage. Alright, so you have something to keep the monkeys in. You then need, like a thermostat. Man, I have a lot of, like, square-like things here. So there's, like, an up arrow and a down arrow, and there's a, I don't know, 65 degrees or something like that. So there's a thermostat, right? And then what else in your materials? We have, oh, duh, we have monkeys. Wow, that's awful. Monkey. Whatever. So if I call it a monkey, it is a monkey. So that's what we're using. We're using a thermostat. We've got their little playpen cage looking thing and an alien, but it really is a monkey. All right. So we got monkey. We got our materials. All right. And then you're gonna label your procedure. And the reason you want to set it up like this is because obviously titles go first. Then you want to state your problem and your hypothesis. The reason you do this is because everybody needs to know what the issue is. Like, you don't read a paper and you have to get in like 8 paragraphs before you figure out what the problem is. The problem needs to be stated first and foremost, so that I know as a reader, like, okay, well, I care about monkeys being close, so now I'm going to read this paper. Or, all right, well, monkeys are close. Well, unfortunately, I'm literally a regular person, so I do not care at all, so I'm not going to read this paper. But you want to state it at the top. All right. So, and then you label your materials, and now we're going to go on a procedure, because now that I have my material set up, what do I do with my materials? So here's procedure where we turn the temperature up slowly. Actually, turn the temp up 1 degree at a time, and you do have to be specific with this at a time. And then, I don't know what else we do. What else do we do? Watch the monkeys. Because we got to watch them, see if they spread out or whatever, right? So all we're doing is increasing temperature. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Sorry I slammed on the table. That might have created some kind of weird feedback. But anyway, now we're going to talk about our results. So now we talk about what happened. So in my prediction, I predicted that, it was because of temperature. So now we see that as temp increases, monkeys spread out. There you go. So now we show them our results spread out. Alright, so now we have our results down, and we're going to move on to the very last part. And by the way, this is normally in some kind of table, so you'd have like a graph. So it's like, here's temperature, and as temp goes up, here's monkey spreadness. Whatever, some kind of value of monkey spreadness, and you should see it move something like that. It should move upward. So there should be a lot more monkey spread out as temperature gets higher. Right? So your conclusion is going to be some kind of statement like, okay, well, monkeys, you would actually word this as, we accept our hypothesis. I'm not going to talk about specific hypotheses right now because they haven't talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But we accept our hypotheses as true or something like that. So it does have to do with temperature. Okay, so these are just the steps of a typical lab report. You definitely need to include them all. So in case you have to write any lab reports, this is how you handle it. All right, let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to have you guys move to page. Let's see, page 6 is, okay, so page 6 is just going to show you how to, or I'm sorry, rather going to ask you to do a lab write-up, that's fine. Page 7 is just a question about lab write-ups. Okay, ways of representing data. This is page 8. Okay, so this is actually going to be a little bit important. We actually talked about how to do data in one of our older lectures. Let me see if I can find it real quickly for you guys. Looks something like that. We talked about line graphs and that kind of thing. So now we're just going to go over a bunch of different things, but we're also going to cover the difference between quantitative and qualitative. So just remember, this is going to come up again because whenever you work with data, you have to understand quantitative versus qualitative. So hopefully you remember from lecture 1 that quantitative is anything that you can count. Qualitative, on the other hand, is going to be things that you can describe. So taking a look here, you'll notice that we have quantitative. It's just, can you count it? Qualitative is just describing it. You won't be able to count it, okay? You can change anything qualitative into quantitative. You can change anything quantitative into qualitative. But the point is, are you counting it? Quantitative. Are you talking about its qualities? Are you describing its qualities? Then it is qualitative. All right, so that is quantitative versus qualitative. That's pretty much all page 8 is talking about. We're going to move on. Page 9 has just examples of a couple of the graphs we're going to look at. I'm going to go for each of them specifically, and I think they're going to talk about that good. So at page 10, we've got a pie chart, right? So a pie chart's real simple, and it's probably going to be the most straightforward of your graphs. You've probably seen it used a lot. Business people love pie graphs. Unfortunately, a pie graph is actually kind of pointless. All it does is it splits into sectors a bunch of different things. Alright, so here's something, and here's something else, and then here's like stars, and this one's going to be swirlies, like that. So you have 4 different sections. Each of these are 25%. Right? So pie graphs are really nice for just showing the relationship between a bunch of little things, but unfortunately it does not work if you've got really tiny things. So pie charts are virtually useless. They won't be used for much except for looking nice. So it's good for selling ideas. Or categorizing a bunch of different things together. So if you were talking about, you know, who's buying more of what. So if we want to talk about cookie sales. And so here's our pie graph of a cookie, or pie sales. Let's make it pie sales. So you'd be like, well, a quarter of the people like blueberries. So here's a blueberry. And then a really, really tiny amount of people like, I don't know, what's the kind of pie people? Meat pie. People hate meat pies, I think. I don't really know. But a really tiny amount of people like meat pies. And then the whole rest of this here would be like apple pie. Very basic kind of pie. Right? So it's really great for comparing different things together in a graphical way. So it looks really, really pretty when you've got a bunch of different categories, but you don't have any specific numbers. Like I don't know that they ate 8 meat pies, 20 blueberry pies, and like 100 apple pies. Like I don't have actual numbers. I only have percentages. So for graphing percentages and for figuring out like just overall proportions without any real numbers, pie charts are the greatest. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and move on. Let's look at page 11. We're gonna talk about all those like line graphs. Yeah, line graphs or scatter plots, whatever you want to call it. So just in case you guys are confused about the difference, here's the line graph. So I plot some dots, like that. Cool. That's a line graph. Here's a scatter plot. So plot some dots, just like that. So steps are the same so far. And guess what? I'm not going to draw a line. That's literally the difference. So scatter plot is dots. Line graph is a scatter plot. It's just now you've drawn a line through it. All good? All right. So that is the difference between line. Wow, that was sloppy. And scatter. All right, line and scatter plots. Any questions about that? All right. I realized that I'm not actually teaching a class. I'm just used to asking for feedback, so I know that that was dumb of me. Uh, Whatever. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. These are line graphs. Just for the record, line and scatter plots are great for comparing two variables. All right, so if you have two things and you're comparing just these two things, so like height and age. So as you get older, you generally get taller, right? And then I don't know. This one would be whatever. You get the idea. So if you're comparing two variables, line and scatter plots are the #1 thing to use. So just remember, pie charts, great for things that you don't actually have numbers for, but you have a lot of. So if I'm comparing a bunch of different types of pies, a bunch of different types of foods, a bunch of different types of people or countries or that kind of thing, but I don't actually have any numbers, pie charts are great. If I do have numbers and I'm only comparing two things, line and scatter plots are the #1. And on page 12, I'm thinking we're doing bar. Yeah, okay. Good, so we got bar graphs. So let's talk about bar graphs real quickly and just adjust that a little bit. So bar charts are nice. They're again to compare a couple variables, but here. Alright, so this is a bar graph. And the reason it is a bar graph is because it has bars. These little like these things. That's a bar. Alright, so these things are bars and they represent some number. They're always going to be numbers marching up this left side, something like this. It doesn't really matter what kind of numbers. Like, let's say it is, again, let's do height. Alright, so these are tall and these are shorter. But the problem is, at the bottom, you're not going to have just one variable like you did in line and scatter plots. Instead, you're going to end up with a lot of different variables. So like this bar is going to represent the average height of people in America. And then this is like the average height of people in Asia. And this is the average height of people in Europe, and this is the average height of people in I don't know, Russia or something like that. So it would just compare a bunch of different things, much like a pie chart does. Okay, so remember, pie charts for a lot of things. So is a bar graph, but the one difference is that a bar graph you're actually going to have numbers. So with a pie chart, you had a bunch of percentages. It was like 20% here, 10% there. These are actually going to be like 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, etc., etc. Okay? So that is a bar graph. So you're comparing a bunch of different things in one variable. You're doing height or you're doing weight or something like that. It's just a bunch of different places, a bunch of different things, but I actually do have numbers. Alright? So I move on to the next one. A histogram. Alright. So the first line of this histogram is actually kind of fitting. It says, a histogram usually takes the form of a bar chart, but with a specific purpose. Yeah, that's 100% true. So this could be the height. That's fine. And this is America, Asia, Europe, Russia. But what it would do is it would really just take. So here's a histogram. I'm going to draw it right next to it. So here's a bar graph. Oh, sorry, you guys can see that. So that's a bar graph, remember. We're going to do a histogram right over here. It's pretty much the same thing, except, so here's height again, same kind of stuff. And I am going to have a bar, another bar, another bar, another bar, another bar, whatever. You're going to get a bunch of bars, right? Normally more than a bar graph, but the idea is this. This would be young Americans. So anybody under the age of 20 or something like that. So this is young Americans. This is adult Americans. And this is Russian Americans. Or wait, that doesn't make sense. Young Russians and then adult Russians and da 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 da. For all intents and purposes, for what you guys are going to be doing, you can just kind of assume that a histogram is a really specific bar graph. There are actually a couple other differences, and I can word them in really, really fancy ways. You don't have to worry about that. It really is just this will specifically group things a little bit tighter, whereas this kind of just groups whole continents or whole fruits or whole vegetables, whatever else. Alright? So don't worry about the difference between a bar and histogram too much. I just want you to be able to tell them, or tell the difference between like a bar and histogram and this and that. So they were really just three categories. Pie charts, categorizing things without numbers. Line and scatter graphs, comparing two things with exact numbers. Bar graphs, histograms, comparing lots of different things with specific numbers. Alright? So let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to skip page 14. That's an exercise for you. This is page 15. Analyzing research data. Oh, okay. So let's talk about the difference between descriptive and inferential analysis. Misspoke there. So, stop that. There we go. Descriptive analysis is going to be just like it says. You're only describing the situation. So all you're doing is describing. You are not adding your own thoughts. So this is not asking for your opinion. You're not asked to make a guess as to what's going to happen. You're not doing anything. You're just describing what's going on. So in our monkey situation, it's not a hypothesis. It's not where I say things like, I think it's because of temperature that the monkeys are huddled close together. You would just say things like, monkeys are huddled close together. They're brown. They smell funny. That kind of thing. So those are just describing. That is descriptive analysis. You're just describing and saying exactly what you see. On the other hand, inferential analysis is where we start to do guesswork. So, oh my gosh, there we go. Inferential is going to be guesswork. You are going to add your opinion. You're going to make hypotheses. So you're going to ask yourself, what happens next? So if you're just describing everything that happened, so like over here, I would describe the whole experiment like this. Monkeys are huddled together. We turned up the temperature. The monkeys spread apart. That's it. You're done. You'd be over with descriptive. Descriptive analysis is much easier, but it doesn't tell you anything. So now what we do in inferential is we add a little something. Monkeys are huddled close together. We turned up the temperature. They spread apart. We think they spread apart because they were too warm. We think this, or we predict that this will happen. If we were to turn the temperature back down, we predict that they would huddle back up. Okay, so inferential analysis means that you make an inference, or you make a guess or hypothesis. You go beyond the data. Okay, descriptive analysis really just says that you read the data word for word. All right, so that is the difference between these two. We're going to go ahead and move on. Let's take a look at slide 16. Just kidding. You're going to have to find the difference between that. Hopefully you'll be able to figure out which one. Just remember the difference between descriptive and inferential. 18. We're going to talk about hypotheses and predictions. You guys already know the scientific method. You have to look at your research data and predict what happens and whatnot. Okay, so don't worry about 18. 19, it talks more about hypotheses. I told you guys hypotheses have to be tested, and whenever we find out whether or not a hypothesis is true or false, we don't call it true or false. We call it accepted or rejected. So if your hypothesis turns out right, so in our monkey situation, we said, what do we say? It was due to temperature. So we said that monkeys huddling together is affected by temperature. We turned up the heat and they spread apart. We turned down the heat or whatever and they got closer together. So obviously it's true, and what you say is that our hypothesis was accepted. We accept that temperature affects monkey clustering, right? On the other hand, rejected would be as if they just all stay together forever. We don't say that we were wrong. We don't say this or that. All we say is that our hypothesis was rejected. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Let's take a look at slide 20. Oh, that's a question for you guys. Good luck to luck. And 21. 21 really just says share. So every time you do research, you always have to share it. So that's a big deal. Like I said earlier, that's going to show up on your ACT. Make sure to share your results. All right, page 22 is the same way. 23 is a summary and whatnot. 24 is, the end. So, all right. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm not really sure what else we need to cover with this section. This one looks pretty straightforward. The hardest part is going to be telling the difference between these three graphs. Oh, sorry, upside down. So yeah, these three graphs, make sure you know the differences between all three of them, and you should be good. Feel free to contact me, message me, email me if you have any questions. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you guys next video.